In this video, we'll examine canine body language for stress and help you learn to decode information from your dog. Learning to recognize early signs of stress will give you a huge edge in diffusing potentially bad situations before they go sideways. We're going to cover a lot coming up. Hey everyone, Ian here with Simpatico Dog Training. Welcome to our video on decoding body language for stress in dogs. As usual, notes, links, and resources are included in the description below, along with timestamps so you can revisit any section later on. Also, stay tuned until the end for some code green signals to watch for. To begin with, it is essential to understand that stress is categorized into two distinct types. Typically, when we think of stress, we think of the bad kind. This includes anxiety, emotional turbulence, and even physical pain. This is called distress. There's also the so-called good kind of stress, eustress. This is moderate or normal psychological stress that ultimately has a beneficial result. So, if you're planning a wedding or an overseas vacation, those are good things you're looking forward to, but they're stressful. This is eustress. If your basement floods or you get pulled over for speeding, this is distress. It's essential to understand how to assess your dog's stress level and provide concurrent support, coping strategies, and opportunities for decompression. It's also important to recognize that each dog is a unique individual. While I will provide a list of signs to look for, remember that your dog will express their signals in their own unique way and to varying degrees. Additionally, some breeds are more likely to be drawn to certain types of signs over others. For example, guardian and herding breeds tend to display more obvious signals, whereas other breeds may be less obvious in their level of concern. Their body shape can also make some signs easier or harder to interpret. For example, pricked ears are simpler to read than floppy ears, and long tails are easier to interpret than curled or docked tails. All of this is flexible though, and you need to understand your dog as an individual. Watch closely, take notes on what you observe in different situations, and act based on your observations. While you're looking, make sure to look at the whole picture. When people describe a bad incident to me, they often say, "But the tail was wagging, I just don't get it." A wagging tail is not always a good thing. That's a myth. Although you can tell a lot by the type of wag it is, it's also only part of the complete portrait, along with other body language pieces that are being displayed. In behavior, we also use the ladder model to describe how stress builds towards aggression. As you can see in the graphic, there are steps leading up to actual bites. If you're paying attention, you can see the ascent and stop it. It's worth noting, though, that your dog can skip rungs on the ladder if a certain stimulus is intrusive. Another useful analogy is to think of your dog as a teapot. By the time it whistles, you're already in trouble. Get it off the stove when the water's lukewarm, when you just start to hear that faint crackle or the groaning of the metal as it heats up. Right now, we're going to look at some common body language signals. An exhaustive list is way beyond the scope of this video. This is just an introductory list of things to look for, and I'll provide further resources at the end of this video. In the eyes, look for crescent moons with slight whites showing. Whale eye is more pronounced than the crescent moon, where a significant amount of the sclera is showing. Furrowed brow. This can happen on its own without the eyes. The brow ridge pops, sometimes with a crease in the middle. A hard stare shows confidence in aggressive signals. This is usually accompanied by a forward posture or freezing. Here's an example of looking at the whole picture. This dog is displaying classic crescent moons. However, also notice the loose open mouth and the relaxed body posture. In this case, the picture is telling you this is a calm dog, not a stressed one. The crescent moons are simply evidence that dogs' eyes track, just like ours do. The ears. Flat ears, or ears swept back, also called bunny ears, are often associated with fear. Airplane ears. The dog is alert towards something. It's something to look for as part of the whole precursor package. Pinched ears that are held super close to the head. The mouth. Long lips show tension in the face. The commissures, which are the corners of the mouth, will tend to move back. Sometimes there's also some furrowed brow and whisker pop. This is usually a more defensive posture. If the mouth is open, it tends to make a V shape. The agonistic pucker is an offensive signal. You'll see a C shape from the side as the commissures come forward, and they'll show their incisors and canines. This is most often seen in resource guarding, although, as always, context matters, as some dogs will also pucker like this during play, and it is completely normal in that setting. The tongue flick, or lip licking, is a common stress displacement signal. You'll usually see this when something invasive is happening, like they're being hugged or handled. It sometimes also happens at the onset of social interaction. I personally encountered this one a lot in the shelter. Yawning is a common stress displacement behavior. Many people overlook or misidentify this as simply being tired. It's important to look for yawning during social interactions, especially with people. Pay attention to the frequency of yawning over time and adjust the length of those interactions. As always, context matters. Sometimes they are just tired. Again, this is why no single body language element can adequately tell you what's going on. A lumpy whisker bed. The whisker bed will form little lumps, and that part of the face may puff out slightly. This typically precedes an agonistic pucker, but they may go right into the bite. The whiskers may flare or pop. Tension ridges. This is where it's really crucial to hone your observational skills and know your dog's baseline. During stress buildup, you'll see actual tension lines form in the musculature of the face. Everything tightens up, especially below the eyes and behind the commissures. Sudden ground sniffing. Many people overlook this one too, especially at locations outside the home. I hear people chuckle and say, "Lots of smells," when in fact, the behavior is primarily a form of stress displacement. In these cases, the dog is trying to look busy because they're delaying or avoiding an interaction. Don't get me wrong, smelling is a vital part of being a dog. However, the act of smelling is also often used as a means to cover up uncertainty or as a stall in social interactions. Ear scratching. This often happens when you're asking your dog to do something and they have mixed motivations. It's a delay just to get a second to reset their bearings. Dogs will also ear scratch as a stall in social situations where they may have mixed emotions. Scratching at a collar or harness is a common displacement behavior caused by social pressure. Many people attribute scratching behavior like this to the collar or harness, especially if it's new, but that's often just a convenient outlet for the small amounts of stress from a social interaction. You'll know the difference because if it's the hardware, they'll scratch it at any time, but when it's a displacement behavior, they'll only scratch immediately after some type of social interaction. I see this in puppy classes all the time. A lowered head and neck is usually connected to resource guarding. Remember the primary resources for a dog: food, water, toys, space, people, and favorite locations. Piloerection is the technical term for raised hackles. It indicates arousal in response to a specific stimulus, and I talk a lot more about the nature of arousal in this video. Piloerection doesn't necessarily mean a dog is about to be aggressive, but it's something to watch for. Depending on the dog and the situation, it can be as obvious as a full-length mohawk or as subtle as a small tuft at the base of the tail. For some dogs, it's so faint that you only notice it when they turn and the light hits the hair just right. You need to know your dog and stay alert for it in these cases. The extent of piloerection varies among dogs, breeds, and their level of excitement or alertness. Remember, it's not inherently bad. Always consider the context and how well your dog processes their emotions. The tail. A tucked tail is a very recognizable sign of stress and uncertainty. A high flagging tail is on the other end of the spectrum. When the vibe is arousal and stress, it's typically a high and fast wag plus a flagging tip where it bends toward the head. The intensity of this depends on the breed, but think rattlesnake. I've seen it on labs, just kind of straight up and tickling the air. On terriers, you tend to get the buzzsaw. However, when it's fear, you'll get the tucked tail. Again, look at what's normal for your dog breed. For example, this Legato Romagnolo has a naturally straight tail when he's out and about. As you might imagine, tail position is impossible to see on a dog with a tiny tail or a docked tail, so you'll have to look at other parts of the whole picture. The urogenital checkout. This is where they stop and check out their genital area, almost as if they're checking to make sure everything is still there. This occurs with both males and females, regardless of whether they are intact or not. It's generally in response to something invasive, such as hugging, handling, or even petting when they're feeling uneasy about something. Urination. Urinating in social situations is a frustrating one for people. Here, a dog may spritz or spray a small amount of urine when they make social contact with another dog or person. Sometimes it happens in obviously stressful situations, such as at the vet or even at home when you're clipping nails or something. Please understand that dogs are an olfactory dominant species. The odors associated with urine and feces are part of their larger communication and social systems. Submissive urination is a common canine communication signal that other dogs inherently recognize. This is a confidence issue, not a potty training one. When dogs do this in our training facility, people get frustrated and say, "I just had him outside." And we reassure them that this is not a potty training issue. It's not about eliminating waste. It's a signal to other dogs and people that I don't want any trouble. It's a proactive white flag, and it is very common. Another one that goes along with urination is the tap out. This is an important distinction because many people mistakenly believe it's an invitation to scratch the belly, and it's not. Now, dogs do that. It's called a flip over, but you need to know the difference between a flip over and a tap out. In a tap out, the head usually goes down first, and they'll kind of go vertebrae by vertebrae, and you'll see some other stress signals in combination. When you back off, the dog will get up right away, kind of like those push puppet toys. Watch how this golden doodle taps out and comes back depending on how close I get to her. A tap out means, please go away. This is a submissive cutoff cue that the dog wants the interaction to end. We'll talk about the flip over, which is good, a little later. I had a Jack Russell once who, when he was younger, struggled with high-energy social situations with people. People would greet him excitedly and it would overwhelm him a little. When they walked up to him, he'd tap out. He was trying to say, "I need a minute." But of course, they all thought he was asking for a belly rub, so then they'd scratch his belly and he'd spray pee everywhere, which would frustrate everyone. We eventually got over this through training and socialization. Building his confidence in social situations was paramount, and I encouraged him to move away when he didn't want to interact with people. And in high energy social situations where he got a little overwhelmed, he got really good at sidestepping petting attempts like a boxer dodging a hook. He was an obedience pro, but I allowed him to self-manage like this. I didn't feel like it was my place to make him do things he was uncomfortable with, like a kid on the spectrum. I told people, he'll come up to you when he's ready. And he did. Flicker freezes happen when the dog stops panting and closes their mouth momentarily. So you have to know what you're seeing. The whole body just stops for an instant, like a flicker. They never look happy and soft when this happens. When you see your dog shift their weight away from someone, intervene. Dogs do this especially when they feel boxed in. Do not remove the flight option, or things will go sideways very quickly. Almost every TV reporter whose face was bitten missed this sign, and others, right before the bite occurred. A high rate of respiration that's out of context, meaning it's absent of any obvious physical exertion, is something to key in on. The tongue may hang out and it will be what's called a spatulate tongue. Again, context matters. Sometimes this does happen because they're physically tired. Look at the events leading up to this though. If nothing physical has happened, this may be a sign of stress. Also, what other signs do you see? The avoidance category covers several small behaviors. Lookaways and avoiding eye contact is one. Getting up and leaving is another. Remember never to remove the flight option. Allow your dog to gain space when they want it. Penis crowning. This happens around food or resource, but it's also quite common in social situations as a sign of mixed feelings or feeling overwhelmed. There is no female equivalent for this one. Penis crowning is often overlooked as excitement, but this is a micro sign of stress. You'll often see this combined with other things like yawning and shake-offs. Coping with stress, or what to do about it. I want to be clear that not every instance of stress will lead to a bite. Most dogs will start dawdling, displacing, and fidgeting due to small amounts of stress, and these are healthy mechanisms. However, if the stress level gets high enough, the sympathetic nervous system will take over and your dog will go into some version of fight or flight. The intensity of that response and whether they'll prefer to fight or get away, or even freeze, will depend on their genetics, their past learning, their individual personality, and the situation. In any event, if you see some of these signals, be proactive. It doesn't mean you have a bad dog, but don't take them for granted. Here are some suggested action steps. Don't allow stress to accumulate. Dogs handle stress differently than we do. Know your dog, learn their language, and know where their threshold is. Your dog is ultimately your responsibility. It's your job to recognize signs of stress and to help them. Advocate for them, build resiliency through training and socialization, and manage situations when necessary. Allow detox time. Both dogs and humans tend to take a while to metabolize stress chemicals in their bodies. Sometimes triggers may not be individually a big deal, but when they come one after another, this is called trigger stacking, and your dog can reach their limit and pop if you're not paying attention. Don't force your dog to remain in stressful situations. On one hand, I believe that learning to cope with small amounts of stress is a crucial life skill that can be developed through relationship, training, support, and socialization. On the other hand, though, that doesn't mean that we force them to endure things that they are unprepared for or are struggling with for some reason or another. Don't force your dog to interact with people or dogs if they're not into it. Always provide a flight plan. Make sure your dog doesn't get boxed into situations and that there's somewhere they can always go to cool off. We must allow dogs to give themselves space, and so I'm a firm believer in the concept of obedience with exception. This means, for example, that if your dog chooses to disobey a request in order to avoid conflict, you should absolutely support that. For example, If you were to ask your dog to downstay in the living room where people were visiting and your dog chose to walk away and lie down away from people, you should absolutely give them a pass on that. This is your dog self-managing, and you should respect that. Your dog will rejoin you if and when they're ready. This brings me to the concept of consent. Your dog must be able to exercise some autonomy over their own life. If your dog is saying, "I'm not okay with what's happening right now," it's inhumane and unethical to force them to endure it. So if Aunt Louise stops by and her kids want to mush your dog's face, make sure your dog is okay with that interaction. If not, intervene so your dog doesn't feel like they have to. Don't throw gasoline on the fire. Don't reprimand your dog or use your mom voice when you see these signs. Stay calm, neutral, and non-reactive yourself. As a famous behaviorist says, you'll never get control of your dog if you can't control yourself. So give your dog an exit, diffuse the situation, and use your relevant obedience so your dog has something to do that they know they can receive reinforcement for. Likewise, if you're in the habit of correcting your dog for some of the more overt signals like growling or air snapping, you're just suppressing the signals, not the stress itself. They'll stop giving those signals ahead of time and then they'll bite without warning. They wouldn't be giving you those signals in the first place unless they were already significantly stressed. Don't put your dog in situations that stress them out that much, and get some help with training and behavior modification to build the confidence and skills necessary for your dog to do better in similar situations. As I always say, fix the well, not the sink. And finally, dogs don't bite without warning. If it's a surprise, you're not paying attention. A ton of bites in the world could be avoided if owners learned how to recognize all of those small signals leading up to a bad situation. Bottom line, behavior doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you're seeing your dog display some kind of signal, they're responding to something in the environment, even if you don't immediately know what it is. Get involved. Okay, that's all pretty heavy duty, and I don't want this video to be too grim, so let's take a look at some of the good stuff. How do you know your dog is enjoying an interaction? Well, the following code green signals are used to invite interaction with people or other animals. Remember that even with these signals, they can have multiple meanings, so take everything into context and ensure that you look at the whole picture. Loose body muscles. For me, this is the most important one. A loose, relaxed body is the best indicator that a dog is enjoying an interaction. Play bows, where the elbows touch the ground and they're floppy and silly. An easy wagging tail. Favorable characteristics include a flat, wide wag, the windmill, and/or a whole butt wiggle. Submissive grins. Submissive grins can look scary to the untrained eye, but you'll also get ragdoll bodies and soft blinky eyes with this one. The flip over. Unlike the tap out, good rollovers are a flip, not a vertebrae at a time. Their body will also be wiggly and waggly. This is a good sign they're enjoying the interaction. A relaxed posture and soft eyes, sometimes with a tongue loll. Now, sometimes you'll see mixed signals. A dog may be enjoying an interaction and still give a shake off or a tongue flick or break off and do a ground sniff. It's okay. It's like being at Disneyland, which is great fun, but you still need breaks. Eustress is still stress. It fatigues the body. Allow your dog to exercise choice and consent. Make sure they always have the option to move away and are praised for making their own choices to self-manage productively. With all this new knowledge, observe your dog and jot down what you notice. Make a list of your dog's main signals. What are some signs of stress you see in your dog? What are some happy signs? The more you know, the better you'll be able to communicate effectively with your dog. The last point I want to mention is to consider elderly, disabled, or injured dogs. Older dogs often have a lower tolerance for stressors. The same applies to dogs experiencing chronic discomfort. Similarly, a dog with impaired hearing or vision will be more sensitive to stressors. If you have a dog that falls into any of these categories, paying close attention to body language cues will be even more important. Be supportive and make reasonable accommodations for your dog. As I'm sure you've seen by now, canine body language is a deep subject. There's way more than we have time to talk about here. If it's a subject that interests you and you'd like to get to know your dog better, here are some additional places you can look. Lily Chin is an American artist whose posters are an excellent primer for kids and adults. She has also published a super book called Doggy Language. Turid Rugas is a Norwegian trainer with the book Calming Signals. There's also a companion DVD featuring videos of her examples along with additional bonus material. Both of these are incredible resources. If you want to get stupendously granular with this, check out Sarah Colney's DVD, Language of Dogs. It's very thorough with lots of video and photo examples. It's intended for professionals in animal welfare, but even pet owners will learn a lot from this. Whew, I'll bet your brain is buzzing after all of that. If you have any questions, please put them down below. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss any of our videos. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.